What if I told you that real war only began when swords were laid down and battle trumpets fell silent? The silence that followed hours of clashing metal was not a harbinger of peace, but a signal for the beginning of the darkest and most organized work of antiquity. The Roman war machine did not stop for a second, switching from a mode of destruction to a mode of cold utilization and strict accounting. It was during these first 48 hours that the fate of vast fortunes was decided. The future of thousands of prisoners was determined, and epidemics that could destroy the army faster than any enemy were prevented. It was a grandiose logistical operation where every centurion knew his maneuver as well as he did in battle. Watch the video to the end to learn how the Romans turned the chaos of the battlefield into an orderly economic system and what ritual was necessary to keep the legion from going mad from the experience. What I am about to show you is forbidden in military strategy textbooks as an example of the greatest psychological stress. The first and most terrifying test for a legionnaire was the deafening silence that enveloped the valley instantly after the battle ended. Just a minute ago, the air was filled with screams, orders, and the clang of metal against shields, forcing the body to work at its limits. Now, with the enemy defeated or retreating, the warriors' nervous systems experienced a tremendous shock from the sudden release of tension. The soldiers stood in their ranks, breathing heavily and leaning on their shields, often unable to comprehend that the danger had passed. This moment of transition from fury to calm was critical for maintaining discipline in the unit. The centurions immediately began roll call to bring the men back to reality with familiar service procedures. The commander's voice became the anchor that kept the soldiers' consciousness from falling into the abyss of apathy. Physical exhaustion came like an avalanche as soon as the adrenaline stopped flowing into the blood of the weary men. The armor, which in the heat of battle had seemed like a second skin, suddenly became as heavy as lead, weighing down on their shoulders with an unbearable burden. Muscles cramped from hours of tension demanded immediate rest, but fatigue did not allow them to relax. The legion had to remain in formation until a special order from the legate or tribune. The soldiers' gaze, which until recently had been searching for vulnerabilities in the enemy's defenses, now wandered over the changed landscape. The earth had been plowed by thousands of sandals, the grass trampled into mud, and familiar landmarks disappeared under the rubble of equipment. It was a foreign, hostile space that needed to be put in order as soon as possible. The feeling of victory did not come immediately, giving way to a dull sense of emptiness and indifference. Particular attention was paid to ensuring that soldiers did not break ranks and wander aimlessly among the defeated enemies. Walking alone on the battlefield was strictly punished, as it undermined the unity of the cohort. Everyone had to feel the elbow of their comrade, even when the threat to their lives seemed to have passed. The Roman army was strong precisely because of its collective mind, which suppressed individual fears. The first need that the survivors remembered was not the thirst for glory or loot, but the simple thirst for water. Water carriers began their movement along the ranks, distributing precious moisture from their wineskins. That sip of warm water was the first symbol of a return to life and normal human existence. Simple everyday actions helped the brain switch from survival mode to recovery mode. Commanders closely monitored the emotional state of their subordinates, identifying those who had fallen into a stupor. Such soldiers were not scolded, but were harshly returned to their duties, forced to clean their weapons or repair their ammunition. Manual labor was the best cure for heavy thoughts and helped them keep their sanity. Inaction at such moments was considered the most dangerous enemy of the army's morale. No one took off their helmets until the official command, maintaining full combat readiness in case of a sudden counterattack. This tense wait could last for hours until intelligence confirmed that there was no threat. Only then did a sigh of relief sweep through the ranks, and the tense faces of the soldiers began to relax. In those first hours after the battle, the unique brotherhood that made the Roman legions invincible was formed. The shared experience of mortal danger and the ensuing silence bound people together more strongly than any oath. They looked at each other not just as comrades in arms, but as the only witnesses to what had happened here. It is interesting to see how this theme is perceived in different parts of the world, because human psychology in war is the same everywhere. Where are you from? Do you agree that silence can be harder than the loudest battle? Want to know a secret that will change your understanding of the ancient economy? Right behind the legion's battle lines, like a shadow, moved a second army, consisting not of soldiers, but of merchants. This huge crowd was often as numerous as the troops themselves, but their goal was not war, but profit. It included slave traders, ready to buy thousands of prisoners, and wholesale metal buyers. They were joined by numerous market vendors who brought carts loaded with wine and supplies. They awaited the end of the battle with the same impatience and anxiety as the generals in their tents. For them, the battlefield was not a place of tragedy, heroism, or glory, but a giant market open for only a few days. As soon as the retreat signal sounded, the moment of truth and time to earn money arrived for these people. They knew that it was during these hours that they could make a fortune that would provide for their families for generations to come. As soon as the all-clear signal was given, these people rushed forward, armed with official permits from the quaestor. Simply coming and starting to collect things from the battlefield was strictly forbidden on pain of death. The Roman army was a complex mechanism where even looting was subject to strict bureaucratic rules. Obtaining a license to trade in a combat zone cost a lot of money and required connections. It was high-quality metal that could be remelted and put back into service to equip Roman recruits. Huge carts were loaded with scrap metal that had recently been deadly weapons, but now became mere raw materials. The blacksmiths accompanying the convoy could immediately begin processing it without straying far from the camp. The logistics of this process were astonishing in their scale and speed of execution. A special category was made up of appraisers of art objects and personal jewelry found in the enemy camp or on the bodies of fallen leaders. Barbarians often carried all their wealth with them, including massive gold bracelets and necklaces. Gold chains, precious cups, and richly decorated scabbards were sorted with jeweler's precision right on the field tables. These items required delicate handling and a professional eye so as not to sell them short. Everything of value was set aside for the state treasury and the commander's future triumph in Rome. The most beautiful items were to be paraded through the streets of the capital, demonstrating the grandeur of the victory to the people in the Senate. The rest, which had no symbolic value, was immediately sold to dealers. Real experts worked here, able to determine the fineness of metal and the real value of precious stones by eye. Provisions and wine merchants also set up their stalls, knowing that soldiers would want to spend part of their future share. After the mortal danger and tension of battle, people wanted simple pleasures, good food, and rest. Enterprising market vendors inflated their prices, taking advantage of the moment, but the weary warriors rarely haggled. Wine flowed freely, and the smell of roasted meat overpowered the smell of smoke and blood on the battlefield. Money began to circulate even before the army left the battlefield, creating an instant microeconomy. Legionnaires could pawn their trophies in exchange for hot food, salt, or better equipment to replace damaged gear. Often, a soldier would sell a captured gold cup for a pittance just to get a new pair of boots or a wineskin. It was a cycle of resources that sustained the army on campaign for years and allowed it to be self-sufficient. No less important were the clerks and accountants who recorded every major purchase and every find. The Romans were obsessed with accounting and control, especially when it came to the legion's finances. Roman bureaucracy penetrated even here, demanding a report for every captured standard or chest of coins. Special slaves and freedmen ran between piles of trophies, counting them and entering the data into lists. Records were kept on wax tablets, which were then transcribed into official scrolls to be sent to the Senate. These documents were important for a commander's career, as they proved his honesty and efficiency to politicians. Corruption was severely punished, as concealing spoils from Rome was considered a serious crime against the state. Although it was impossible to completely eradicate theft, the risk of being caught and executed deterred many. This second army provided the legion with everything it needed, freeing the soldiers from having to carry extra weight. Legionnaires had to carry their weapons, armor, and entrenching tools, not bags of looted goods. Everything unnecessary was sold on the spot, turning into light and convenient coins that could be hidden in a belt. This system allowed Roman troops to maintain high mobility without being weighed down by endless carts of junk. War fed war in the most literal sense of the word, allowing the legions to venture further and further from their native borders. By selling trophies, the army could buy grain from the local population or hire guides. This made the Roman military machine independent of supplies from the center for many months. Economic efficiency was as much a weapon of Rome as the short sword, the gladius. The interaction between soldiers and merchants was based on mutual benefit, although not without a degree of contempt on the part of the soldiers. The soldiers considered themselves heroes, shedding blood for the greatness of the empire, and saw the merchants as vultures. Legionnaires risked their lives for loot, while merchants risked only their wallets, buying everything for a pittance from exhausted people. Conflicts and brawls often arose, which had to be broken up by centurions. But without these middlemen, the mountains of loot would have turned into a useless pile of stuff that would have had to be just thrown away. Merchants took on the difficult task of transporting goods to the rear, where they could be sold at a profit. It was a symbiosis, where one side provided protection and goods, and the other provided liquidity and supplies. Invisible threads of trade connected the front lines with the deep rear of the empire. The battlefield was cleared at an incredible speed, and after 2 days, only trampled earth remained. The coordinated work of thousands of people meant that there was no trace left of the huge enemy army. The efficiency of the Roman cleaners was such that archaeologists often find it difficult to find traces of major battles of antiquity. They even took broken spear shafts for firewood and torn clothing for rags. Everything that had any value was collected, recorded, packed, and taken to Roman markets. The wasteland, where the fate of nations had been decided not long before, became clean and quiet. In the next chapter, you will learn how one mistake in dividing the spoils could cost a legionnaire his life. What I am about to show you was strictly taboo for anyone wearing a Roman uniform. The division of spoils was not spontaneous looting, as is often shown in films, but a complex religious and administrative ritual. Everything collected on the battlefield was taken to one specific place, usually in the center of the camp or on a special platform. Concealing even the smallest gold coin was considered not just theft, but a crime against the state and the gods. In the center of this site, a temporary monument to victory was erected, a trophy consisting of the enemy commander's armor placed on a cross made of logs. This was the share of Mars, the god of war, and to touch it meant to bring a curse upon the entire legion. The rest of the weapons and valuables were piled around this sacred symbol, forming huge mounds of metal and fabric. Tribunes and centurions ensured that every soldier handed over everything he found to the common pot. This rule fostered discipline and prevented fights between comrades over rich trophies. A legionnaire had to know that his reward depended on the overall success and decision of the commander, not on the personal luck of a looter. The system was harsh but fair in the eyes of the ancient man. Once everything had been collected, the work of the quaestor, the army's chief treasurer, began. He assessed the total value of the spoils and set aside the portion that was to be sent to Rome. This portion was inviolable and served as proof of victory before the Senate and the people. Only then could the remainder be distributed among the participants in the battle. The distribution was strictly hierarchical, from the legate to the ordinary soldier and even the baggage handler. Each rank was assigned a specific coefficient, and no one could receive more than their share. It was reminiscent of the payment of dividends in a huge corporation, where each shareholder has their own percentage. Such transparency reduced the risk of riots and discontent. Interestingly, part of the spoils was often burned or destroyed on the spot as a sacrifice. This may have seemed barbaric and wasteful, but for the Romans it was a way of thanking the gods for their support. Huge bonfires made from enemy shields and spears lit up the night sky, demonstrating the complete superiority of the victors. Special attention was paid to the personal belongings of enemy leaders, which had symbolic significance. They were never sold or given to soldiers, but kept for a triumphal procession in the capital. These items became historical artifacts, which were then kept in temples for centuries. Any attempt to take something out of turn was punishable by death by stoning or beating with sticks by one's own comrades. This severe punishment, known as fustigation, ensured the honesty of every soldier. Collective responsibility made theft impossible, as the entire centuria could suffer for the misdeeds of one. Thus, The division of spoils became a lesson in obedience and order, reinforcing the structure of the legion. It was a moment when the army confirmed its loyalty to Rome and its laws, even far from home. Gold and silver served only as a tool for managing a huge military machine. Don't forget to like if you were impressed by this harsh discipline, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos about the mysteries of ancient history. Are you ready for the shocking truth about the fate of those who lost the battle? Once the material valuables had been collected, it was time for the most valuable resource of antiquity: people. Prisoners captured during battle and pursuit were herded into special temporary pens under heavy guard. Here began the process that forever transformed free people into talking tools. Roman doctors and appraisers examined each prisoner as if they were cattle at a fair, determining their physical condition and potential value. Strong and healthy men were selected for hard labor in mines or quarries. This was the most terrible fate, as life expectancy there was measured in months. They were branded and immediately put in heavy shackles. Special attention was paid to those who possessed any craft skills or literacy. Blacksmiths, potters, teachers, and doctors among the enemies were valued like gold. They were separated from the general mass, fed better, and treated more carefully, understanding their future benefit to the Roman economy. These people could expect a relatively tolerable life as domestic slaves. Women and adolescents formed a separate group, destined to be sold to households or workshops. Their fate depended solely on the whims of the buyer and market conditions. The sorting took place in complete silence and businesslike manner, without unnecessary cruelty, but also without a shred of compassion. It was simply a bureaucratic procedure for registering property. Captured leaders and noble warriors were held separately, under strict conditions, but their lives were spared. They were needed for political purposes, to be paraded in chains during the commander's triumph. After that, they faced either execution in prison, or in rare cases, honorable exile. They were living symbols of the conquered peoples. Huge columns of people were formed to be sent to the rear, where wholesale buyers were already waiting for them. The logistics of moving thousands of prisoners required precise organization, water, and food supplies. The Romans were not interested in the death of their goods en route, so minimum conditions for survival were provided. A minimal security force was used to control this mass of people, as the prisoners were morally broken and disoriented. The psychological shock of defeat and captivity made them obedient. Any disobedience was suppressed instantly and demonstratively, so that the rest would not even think of rebelling. This whole procedure usually took the entire second day after the battle and was carried out with frightening efficiency. The Roman system digested entire peoples, turning their energy into roads, aqueducts, and villas. Captivity was not just a deprivation of liberty, but a complete erasure of identity and past. Slaves became the foundation of the empire, and each new conquest brought a fresh influx of labor. The battlefield was where that foundation was laid. In the next chapter, you will learn how the Romans fought an invisible enemy that could kill more soldiers than the enemy army. Sanitizing the battlefield was not a matter of aesthetics, but a matter of survival for a huge crowd of people. Thousands of bodies left in the open air began to pose a deadly biological threat within a day. In the warm climate of the Mediterranean, the decomposition process was rapid, poisoning the air and water sources. Roman engineers and doctors understood perfectly well the connection between rotting remains and outbreaks of disease. Therefore, immediately after collecting trophies, the funeral teams began their large-scale work. These special units, often formed from auxiliary troops or prisoners, did the hardest and most unpleasant work. For their fallen comrades, the Romans arranged collective funeral pyres or mass graves with minimal rites. This was important for the morale of the survivors, to know that in case of death, they would not be left to be eaten by the elements. The ashes or bodies were buried, and a mound was often piled over the burial site, or a memorial was erected. The bodies of enemies were treated in a purely utilitarian manner. They were dragged into huge pits or ditches far from the camp and water sources. If there was enough firewood, they were burned to completely eliminate the risk of infection. The smoke from these giant fires was visible for many kilometers, serving as a grim reminder of the battle that had taken place. Clothes and rags soaked in dirt and filth were also destroyed by fire. The Romans knew that fabric could carry diseases and parasites, so they did not spare low-quality captured textiles. Purification by fire was the most reliable method of disinfection available at the time. Special attention was paid to water sources in the area. They were checked for cleanliness and, if necessary, guards were posted to prevent anyone from using suspicious water. Contamination of a stream or well could disable a legion faster than enemy cavalry. The soil in the most brutal battle areas was sometimes sprinkled with lime or salt if such resources were available. This helped speed up decomposition and neutralize odors. Roman pragmatism was evident here as well. They used the chemical properties of substances without even fully understanding the nature of bacteria. All this activity was carried out in a hurry, as the army could not remain in the contaminated area for long. The main task was to bring the territory to a state safe for the passage of the rear guard and supply trains. Sanitation was part of military discipline, no less important than the ability to wield a sword. If the battle took place near populated areas, the local population was forcibly recruited to clean up. For the residents, this was a terrible duty, but it saved their own homes from epidemics. Thus, within 48 hours, the battlefield was transformed into a black, scorched patch, devoid of any signs of life. It was a sanitary zone that both people and animals tried to avoid. Are you ready to learn the truth about medicine that was 1,000 years ahead of its time? While some troops were busy disposing of and sorting trophies, a real battle for the lives of the wounded was unfolding in the rear of the camp. This battle was no less important than the one taking place on the front lines with swords in hand. Roman military medicine was perhaps the most advanced and organized healthcare system in the ancient world. No other army in antiquity paid so much attention to preserving the lives of its soldiers. Each legion had professional doctors who possessed the tools and knowledge to save hundreds of people. These specialists often had high status and were exempt from regular camp work. They were trained in special schools or gained experience in gladiator schools where injuries were commonplace. Their main task was to return legionnaires to duty, and they did so brilliantly. The infirmary, or valetudinarium, was located in the most protected and quiet part of the camp, far from the noise and dust. It was a complex engineering structure with a well-thought-out layout of corridors and wards. Those who were wounded but had a chance of survival were brought here in a continuous stream. Order was maintained in this place with iron discipline so that the chaos of war would not interfere with the work of the doctors. They also used pure honey, known for its healing and preservative properties. Honey created a protective film that prevented bacteria from penetrating deep into the tissue. They even used pure cobwebs and special tinder fungi to quickly stop bleeding. Nature provided the Romans with everything they needed, and they made skillful use of it. Surgical operations were performed on the spot, often without any serious pain relief. At best, the patient was given a decoction of opium, henbane, or mandrake to dull the senses a little. The skill of the doctors allowed them to remove stuck arrowheads with special spoons without enlarging the wound. Surgeons were able to suture deep cuts with silk threads and even perform complex trepanations of the skull. The speed of the surgeon's work in those days was critical to the success of the operation. The doctor had to act quickly so that the patient did not die of pain shock right on the table. Every movement was honed to perfection through years of practice. There was no room for error because the price of a mistake was measured in human lives. A special skill was required for amputations, which were common after severe limb injuries. Arms and legs crushed by stones or chopped off by swords often could not be saved. Doctors knew how to tie off large arteries to prevent fatal blood loss. This was an advanced technique of ligating blood vessels, forgotten in the Middle Ages and rediscovered only centuries later. They shaped the stump so that the skin covered the bone, and the person could later use a prosthesis. Roman prostheses were highly functional, allowing veterans to remain mobile. The survival rate after such operations in the Roman army was incredibly high for ancient times. Many soldiers continued to serve in the camp in administrative positions after amputation. The wounded were placed in spacious tents or wooden barracks with good ventilation. The Romans understood that stagnant air contributed to the spread of disease, so they ensured proper ventilation. They provided enhanced nutrition to restore strength, including meat, fresh vegetables, and the best wine. Diet was considered an important part of therapy, helping the body fight disease. Clean bedding and regular dressing changes were strictly mandatory and monitored by senior officers. Dirty bandages were immediately burned to prevent the spread of pus. Special orderlies, called capsaria, were responsible for care and carried bags with dressing materials. They were constantly on duty at the bedsides, serving water and monitoring the condition of the patients. The state made sure that wounded soldiers returned to duty as soon as possible. Training a legionnaire took a long time and cost the treasury a lot of money. The health of a legionnaire was a state investment that had to be preserved and protected. Therefore, funds comparable to the cost of weapons were allocated to medicine. This care gave soldiers the confidence that they would not be left to die on the side of the road. Knowing that help would come, the soldiers fought more desperately and were not afraid to risk their lives. The morale of an army with reliable medical support was immeasurably higher than that of the barbarians. Everyone knew that behind them stood a person with a set of life-saving tools. The level of organization of Rome's medical service commands sincere respect even today. Many of the principles established at that time are still used in field surgery today. It was a system built on logic, discipline, and humanism, albeit dictated by military necessity. In the next chapter, you will learn how Rome rewarded its defenders beyond gratitude. After the dust settled and the cries of the wounded subsided, the legion's office, which was no less important than the infantry, took over. The battle may have ended, but for the administrative apparatus, the work was just beginning. The Roman army was a gigantic and complex bureaucratic machine, unparalleled in the ancient world. Here, every step, every decision, and every event was meticulously recorded in writing. Without this paperwork, managing thousands of people would have been simply impossible. Staff clerks worked day and night, often by the light of oil lamps, compiling detailed reports on the battle. Their weapons were pens, and their battlefield was wax tablets and expensive papyrus. They had to prepare documents for dispatch to Rome as quickly as possible so that the Senate would know about the victory or defeat. These people bore a huge responsibility because the perception of the campaign in the capital depended on their words. These reports meticulously listed personnel losses, material expenditures, and the condition of ammunition. Not a single broken cart or dead mule was to be left unaccounted for. Particular attention was paid to lists of distinguished soldiers who had proven themselves in the thick of battle. Generals knew that timely rewards were the key to troop loyalty, so they demanded maximum accuracy from their scribes. Centurions personally submitted lists of those who had shown particular bravery or performed feats in front of their comrades. They acted as witnesses, confirming that a legionnaire was indeed the first to climb the wall or save the commander's life. The accuracy of these records was critically important, as they were used as the basis for distributing monetary rewards and honorary wreaths. A scribe's mistake could deprive a hero of his deserved glory and cause discontent among the soldiers. The mournful records of those killed in battle were kept separately and with particular care. Their names were solemnly crossed off the supply list so that rations would no longer be allocated to them. However, the bureaucratic procedure did not end there, as the legionnaire still had property. The soldiers' personal savings, which were traditionally kept in bags by the standard bearers, were subject to strict accounting. This money was transferred to the legal heirs of the deceased if they could be found. If there were no heirs or the soldier had not left a will, the funds went to the legion's general treasury. The legal aspects of death were worked out in detail by Roman lawyers to avoid disputes and theft. Even after the death of a citizen, Rome continued to protect his property rights. Clerks also compiled endless requests for replenishment of personnel, food, and weapons. The army was an insatiable monster that demanded resources every day. They calculated how many pairs of sandals needed to be replaced after a long march on a rocky road. Footwear was one of the main logistical problems, as it wore out faster than armor. They also meticulously counted how many javelins and arrows were used during battle. Based on this data, orders were placed with the armory workshops in the rear. The clerks calculated how much grain and wine the legion would need for the coming week to avoid starvation. All military logistics were planned solely on the basis of these dry and boring figures. An important part of the office's work was the compilation of solemn victory reports. These texts, full of pathos and pride, were then read aloud to the assembled soldiers. This was a powerful element of state propaganda, designed to strengthen morale. The legionnaires had to feel that they were not just killing barbarians, but making history. The words in these documents transformed a dirty and bloody massacre into a glorious page in the annals of the empire. A skilled scribe could present a difficult battle as an easy and brilliant victory for Roman arms. This reminded the soldiers of the greatness of their mission and that civilization stood behind them. Even failures could be described in such a way as not to cause panic and despondency. The legion's archives were kept in the most sacred place in the camp, the sanctuary of the standards. There, guarded by the best warriors, lay the scrolls in which the entire life of the unit was recorded. These documents were guarded as carefully as the treasury with the soldiers' pay. Only selected officers and trusted scribes had access to them. The loss of documents or the capture of the archives by the enemy was considered an indelible disgrace and a serious crime. A legion that lost its history was like losing its soul and honor. The history of the legion, its victories and traditions were contained in these scrolls. Therefore, during a retreat, the archives were among the first to be saved. A clear and ramified bureaucracy allowed Rome to control armies across vast territories. The emperor could be thousands of miles away, but thanks to reports, he knew the state of affairs at the border. This allowed him to maintain tight control and the principle of unity of command throughout the empire. Without this system, the legions would have turned into uncontrollable bands of mercenaries. Pens scratched away in the headquarters tents just as intensely as swords clanged during battle. The Romans conquered the world not only with the force of arms, but also with the force of organization and order. It is thanks to this enormous amount of paperwork that we know so much about the details of Roman campaigns today. These reports have become the voice of the past, reaching us through the millennia. When the administrative part was completed, the moment that all soldiers had been waiting for arrived, the distribution of rewards, or donativus. The commander gathered the troops for a solemn formation to personally honor the heroes. This was not just a celebration, but an important political act that strengthened the army's loyalty to its leader. Distinguished soldiers were called out of formation and brought before the tribunal, a raised platform where the commander stood. They were presented with phalae, engraved metal discs that were hung on a breast strap. They were also presented with award necklaces, torques, and bracelets, armilli. The clinking of these awards as they walked was music to the soldiers' ears. The highest award for a common soldier was a civilian wreath of oak leaves, awarded for saving the life of a Roman citizen in battle. The recipient of such an award enjoyed enormous respect in society, and even senators were obliged to stand up when he appeared. It was a social ladder accessible through bravery. Officers received award spears without tips and small standards. These symbols of power and valor were then displayed in the atriums of their homes, reminding guests of the owner's merits. A political career in Rome often began with such awards. In addition to honorary insignia, cash bonuses were also awarded. Part of the spoils, converted into coins, was distributed on the spot. The clink of sestertii and denarii was the best remedy for post-battle depression. Soldiers understood that their risk was rewarded with real gold. Sometimes the reward was early discharge from service or the granting of land. For many legionaries who came from poor peasant families, this was the main goal of their entire lives. The dream of owning their own farm made them endure hardship and danger. Public awards created an atmosphere of healthy competition. Soldiers saw that bravery was rewarded here and now, not in the distant future. This motivated others to strive for feats in the next battle. The commander gave a speech praising the valor of his men and promising them even greater riches in the future. Public speaking was part of military leadership. The ability to inspire weary men was the mark of a true leader. The ceremony ended with general rejoicing and the clanging of spears against shields. The legion once again felt united, ready for new campaigns. The rewards turned fatigue into pride. This is how loyalty was forged, allowing commanders not only to defeat enemies, but also at times to seize power in Rome itself. The victory celebrations could not last forever, and after 2 days, the camp returned to its harsh daily routine. The Roman army did not tolerate idleness, which was considered the mother of all vices. The trumpets once again called for training, guard duty, and construction work. The soldiers began to repair their equipment, which had become dull and dented in battle. The blacksmiths' workshops worked at full capacity, straightening helmets and reforging swords. Every legionnaire was required to keep his weapons in perfect condition, and inspections were carried out daily. Training resumed with training weapons, which were twice as heavy as combat weapons. Instructors pushed veterans as hard as recruits, making no concessions for recent achievements. Muscle memory had to be maintained constantly so as not to fail the next time. The camp, which was a temporary home, was fortified and expanded if the army planned to stay. New moats were dug, palisades were erected, and more substantial barracks were built. A legionnaire was half warrior, half builder, and the shovel in his hands was as familiar as the pilum. Strict discipline in matters of food and sleep returned. No excesses, only simple and healthy food. Grain porridge, lard, cheese, and diluted wine. The daily routine was scheduled by the hour, and any deviation from it was punished by extra duty. Scouts once again went on long patrols to ensure the security of the perimeter. War could return at any moment, and vigilance was the key to survival. The eyes and ears of the army never slept. In the evenings, soldiers discussed the past battle around the campfires, but these conversations became increasingly calm. Memory began to smooth out the rough edges, turning the horror they had experienced into tales and legends. The Legion's oral folklore was taking shape. Life returned to its usual routine, where everyone knew their place in their task. This predictability and order calmed the nerves better than any medicine. People felt like cogs in a huge, reliable machine. The Legion was preparing for the next thrust, for new land to conquer. The cycle of war was coming full circle, moving from the phase of destruction to the phase of preparation. The Roman machine continued its movement. Routine was the cement that held the empire's conquest together more firmly than any stone. The final act of the drama that unfolded on the battlefield was the immortalization of memory. The Romans were obsessed with the idea of leaving a mark on history, and the site of victory had to be marked forever. On the field where bodies had lain not long before, construction began on a monument, a tropaeum. It could be a simple structure made of stones and logs, or, in the case of an important victory, a capital stone structure. The names of the commander, the names of the legions, and a brief description of the battle were carved on it. It was a point on the map affirming Rome's power over this territory. For fallen comrades, cenotaphs were often erected, symbolic empty tombs if the bodies could not be found or brought home. The names, ages, and years of service were carved on the tombstones. The epitaphs were brief and dignified. He lived honestly, he served faithfully. These monuments served not only for mourning, but also as border posts. They told the local population and future travelers, the Romans passed through here, and here they won. The landscape changed, acquiring imperial features. Soldiers often pooled their money to order more expensive tombstones for their beloved commanders or friends. There were even special funeral colleges, prototypes of insurance funds that guaranteed a dignified funeral for every member. Brotherhood did not end with death. Over time, these places became shrouded in legend. Local residents began to revere them as sacred, bringing their modest gifts there. The history of the battle was transformed into a myth, where the Romans appeared as giants and demigods. Even when leaving the region, the army left behind these stone testimonies of its power. They stood for centuries, outliving both the empire itself and the peoples with whom it fought. Stone preserved memory longer than the human brain. Psychologically, this allowed the soldiers to close the gestalt of the battle and move on. They left their dead under the protection of stone and inscriptions, believing that their souls had found peace. It was the final act of reconciliation with their losses. Ultimately, all activity after the battle boiled down to one thing: restoring order. The chaos of death was transformed into orderly rows of letters on marble. Rome defeated entropy even in matters of memory. Thus ended those endless 48 hours, forever changing both the land and the people who walked upon it. We have seen that the Roman victory consisted not only of a heroic attack, but also of the painstaking, dirty, and hard work that followed. Cleaning, sorting, treating, and building were as much tools of the empire as the gladius and scutum. This incredible organization and attention to detail made Rome not just a conqueror, but a creator of a new reality. These 48 hours after the battle show us the true face of ancient warfare: cynical, pragmatic, but at the same time surprisingly humane in its care for its own. What on this list of actions did you find most unexpected or shocking? Was it the trading of prisoners right on the battlefield, or the strict accounting of every broken sword? Write your opinion in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to learn more about the hidden sides of history.